Congratulations on the film.
No, thank you.
So, tell me how you're feeling today. The movie opens tomorrow. It's got to be a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah. I mean, we're in a good place. You know, everyone's very happy.
Mm-hmm.
But my main concern is what people think of the film.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, as a filmmaker, you want people to like the movie. And so, we tried to be different. Like, we tried to make a blockbuster that's not completely, is a little bit, tried to be as unique as we could. And we had a lot of support from the studio to do that. And so now you kind of keep your fingers crossed and you hope that there's a lot of other people that feel the same way.
Well, I wrote in my review that what this movie does is take the spirit of the original Godzilla movies and then updates it for a new audience. And by that, I mean the action, the fight scenes are unbelievable. Between the Mutos and Godzilla, absolutely everything that you want to see in a big movie called Godzilla. That's what you want to see. But there's also some moments of like genuine heartbreak, and the characters, the human aspect of it, a lot of times is unexpected. And I don't want to say anything more about that for anyone, but there are some unexpected things that happen. And that, I thought, really added to the movie. We've seen big monsters battling a lot of times, but this movie has that and a human element that sometimes has been missing from some of the Godzilla films.
Oh no, cheers.
Yeah. Was that important to you to I mean, clearly,
sure,
to add it in? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with all those early 80s, late 70s movies where it was like this golden era of fantasy and sci-fi, where you had like Close Encounters and Jaws and Alien and The Thing, and what they all got so right was characters that feel you can relate to, that it was very sort of grounded, believable, and sort of emotional connection that you had with them. And it's something that, with the advent of digital technology, there's a temptation to throw everything CGI at the screen from the opening frame to the end. And those movies I don't seem to care about and watch as many times as those ones I grew up with.
Right.
That I keep going back to because they really affect me, and so we were definitely, in terms of an influence, we're definitely looking back at those kind of movies and trying to structure the film and pace it so that the sense of anticipation was at the maximum it could be. So when you finally see things, hopefully you're with people you care about, and it has the most power it can have. And
it's interesting you mentioned some Spielberg films in there, because when I saw the film I thought, Ford Brody, that sounds like a Spielberg character, that sounds like a Spielberg hero, the name.
Yeah, well, Brody's obviously is from Jaws.
Yeah.
And that was because in early versions of the screenplay, and it's still in the movie, but it's a lot, glimpse and you miss it, but there's this dilemma for him where his dad has to choose whether to keep a power station running, or shut it down, and it was kind of like the close the beaches or not dilemma, and then he's racked with guilt because of it, and so because of his decision, and so we always referenced him as he's the Brody character, like Brody this, Brody that, and then what happens is you get to a point where you reference something so much as Brody that you just one day you go, oh, screw it, let's just call him Brody. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
It's not. You think, why not? You know what I mean? It's obvious what I think the film is one big love letter to Spielberg in some ways. So it's I'm happy to acknowledge that, and the guy was a genius.
You say was.
I did, didn't I?
He's making different movies now than he was.
No, I think he's still making fantastic films. I just mean, the films that launched me into wanting to be a filmmaker were from that era.
Yeah. I have read a great deal about you, and you were, for real, a Godzilla fan.
Sure.
This is not something where there were a stack of scripts that came along and you're like, Godzilla, I'll try that one. You came at this with a great deal of passion for the character. What is it about Godzilla that has made him for 60 years resonate with audiences in the way that he has?
I think there's lots of answers to that. Pick one. For instance, he was born out of a very serious subject matter. Like the very first Godzilla movie, which surprises a lot of people, was incredibly somber, probably the most sort of serious fantasy film ever made, in that really it was, if the Japanese could have made a film just about Hiroshima, they would have, but the censorship wouldn't allow it, so they disguised it as a monster movie where, because of nuclear tests in the Pacific, a city got destroyed, and left radiation everywhere, and so the seriousness of the idea that gave birth to him, I think, helps him resonate for a lot longer. Like it's not a throwaway popcorn idea. It later became more for kids, and they didn't know where to go with it ultimately sometimes, but that always gives it, anchors it, for all time. And their design is like the ultimate dinosaur. He's kind of, but there's enough humanity in him that in the terms of the guy in the suit aspect, that you feel there's a soul inside there. He's lonely. He's kind of, you can empathize with him a bit. He's like the last of his kind. He can't really be friends with us because it's impossible. And I think it taps into this instinct that we have in our DNA that's sort of hardwired, which is that an animal is going to attack our cave and kill us, and it's due any day now. It's it should come every other day, like that's how it used to be. And now in the modern world, it doesn't ever come, but we still expect it. And I think Godzilla kind of taps into that expectation that nature is going to come and destroy everything at some point or other. Like, we've had it too good for too long.
Right. And this movie has the Ken Watanabe line is like, we make the mistake of underestimating nature, as I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he's saying. And his point is, let the monsters battle it out. Let Godzilla take care of this. And I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at it, and not one that I don't think I've seen that in any of the other Godzilla movies, have I? That sentiment? I mean, they always battle, but the humans saying, you know what, nature against nature is probably the best way.
Yeah, I think that the thing that's going on there is he's like, I guess he's trying to say that we can't stop these things.
Yeah.
And you have to just let it play out. It's like a hurricane. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't really go, okay, well, how can we deflect the hurricane? How can we... It's more like, it's going to happen. Just get out of the way, and accept it. And I think that is kind of what's symbolically happening with the big fight at the end of the film, is that and also it gets a cheer, that line, because I didn't realise it when we filmed it, that it was going to be a significant piece of dialogue. You sometimes did. I would turn around to the crew and go, because you get so bored when you're waiting around sometimes to set up shots, and you go, if there was one line from this movie that became like a phrase, which one do you think it would be? And nobody really picked on "Let Them Fight," and I think it's because publicity grabbed it and marketing, and it became like a key line in one of the trailers, but it does sort of represent what the film's about, which is that realization that you've got to let nature play out. Like, we haven't got the power to stop it.
Right. Bryan Cranston, it couldn't be. There isn't a hotter actor in Hollywood right now, probably. Tell me a little bit about working with him.
I mean, he's incredible actor. There's part of me wishes I'd met Bryan when he was like 25 to see if he's the same guy, or whether he's become this incredible actor, or whether he always was and it's just no one gave him the opportunity. Right. Do you know what I mean? Because you wonder whether he's finessed this skill, because he's got it down to a fine art now. Like, there's nothing in terms of like any scenes we throw at him, there's nothing you could ask that he couldn't do or make really convincing. And so he's like a Ferrari or something. Like, he would make, he'd have a scene that was very emotional. He'd make everyone on set like tear up, and at the end, before we'd cut, he'd crack a joke and we'd all be bursting out laughing. and then he'd go straight back into the next take, and we'd be tearing up again, and it's pretty impressive. I mean, I don't know what we would have done if we hadn't got him.
Right. And did having him here, this is your first huge movie. And this is a wild step to take, right? From, Monsters. The first film was so cool. I remember at the film festival three and a half years ago. Yeah. Here, it was the buzz film. Everyone was talking about it. And this is such this is another level thing. I mean, just in terms of everything that goes on around it. Was it grounding to have people like Bryan Cranston and Ken Watanabe and people like that who have sort of been through this sort of thing a little bit before around you while you were making this giant film?
I was surrounded by people who had done this, quite a lot of times. And they were there to sort of guide me and help, keep things on track. The main thing I did was contact a couple of filmmakers and ask for their advice, people who had gone from a small film to a really big film, and hear their stories. And it's always reassuring to hear that they didn't have an experience that you would call fun, because doing these things it's such a marathon.
Yeah.
And such hard work, and you feel like, I'm directing Godzilla, this is the greatest job in the world, why am I not smiling all day long and just skipping around? And it's because you really care about the outcome. Like, you really want the movie to be good, and you have to police so many things constantly. It's like children. It's like you've suddenly had 1,000 children and you're responsible for all of them, and they're all running into the middle of the street, and you're trying to feed them all, and it's pretty relentless. And but then you kind of watch the final film and you get reactions, and hopefully they're good reactions, and it kind of heals all wounds, and it's like childbirth in that sense. You see your baby and you fall in love, and then you want to have another. But it's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done by 100 times.